Yes. Can I have your attention, please? My name is Savannah Gatton. I am an intern at the Chamber of Commerce and a senior in the Wendell Ford Statesmanship Academy. If you guys will stand and do the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Savannah. Well, good evening. I'm Dave Roberts. I'm the chair-elect of the Greater Owensboro Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Welcome tonight to our state candidate forums. I appreciate your attendance. Our chamber's mission is to provide leadership, advocacy, and member services that foster growth and economic prosperity for our region. Forums such as these are an important part of our advocacy effort for the chamber members and the community at large. Elections really do matter. And as part of our Go Vote initiative, our forums are a way to bring awareness to issues important to our broad membership base comprised of business, nonprofit, educational, and other civic entities. Additionally, these forums are conducted to encourage all of Greater Owensboro to participate in one of the most important actions we can take as citizens, and that's voting. We want to thank all the men and women here tonight who are on next week's ballot. It takes a lot of courage and passion to step forth and represent others, and we applaud you for choosing to do just that. Thank you for being willing to step up and serve our Commonwealth. We'd also like to thank Matt Francis, Executive Editor for the Messenger Enquirer, for moderating tonight's forums, and the City of Owensboro for graciously hosting us. And finally, we'd like to thank all audience members who are here this evening, and to those who are watching on YouTube and Facebook. Your involvement is vital to a healthy representative democracy. I'd like to remind our audience that we ask you to refrain from clapping, cheering, or verbal reactions of any kind. We do appreciate you setting a remarkable example of civility for the young people who are here with us tonight. And speaking of those young people, your participation and interest is most encouraging, I think, to all of us. And I'd like to recognize these folks. Anyone that's affiliated with the Wendell Ford Government Education Center, if you would please stand and just be recognized by this group. So. Thank you guys for that. And now, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the night, Mr. Matt Francis.
Hi, everyone. As he said, I'm Matt Francis, and I'm the executive editor at the Messenger Enquirer, and I will be asking the questions tonight. Though I am the one who's asking them, it's important to remember that these questions were crafted by the leadership of the chamber with input from the membership as well. And so most of everything you hear tonight will focus on what's important to the chamber and what's important to the business community at large. I want to go over kind of a little bit on what the format will be. You can see through the signs up there, we have seated everyone by district, lowest district to the highest number district. Challengers are seated on the left, incumbents on the right, on my left and my right, and that's how we will proceed in asking the questions as well. We have two districts where there are no incumbents. One district where neither of the candidates are here yet, and the 14th district is as well. And in those instances, they are just seated in alphabetical order. So how we will go about this is everyone will be able to give an opening statement, and that opening statement will be 60 seconds long. The incumbents will start. So in the districts where there is an incumbent, they will give the first opening statement. In the 14th, we will just go in alphabetical order. So Elizabeth, you will give the first opening statement. On the flip side of that, when we're finished, we will do the closing statements, and they will be 60 seconds as well. And we will do those the opposite. The challenger will go first in those races, and in your race, Scott, you will go first. In between each question, candidates will have 90 seconds to answer, and we will have no rebuttal. So you'll be given 90 seconds to answer, and we have 5 questions that we will be asking tonight. We also have Lottie Boone is handling time, and she will give you a 30-second warning with each question. And then she will also give you time when time was up, and don't make me jump in and cut you off. Please be respectful of the timekeeper. So with that, I will start with the first question. We're going to focus on taxes on the first question. I'm sorry. You're correct. We will start with the District 7. Suzanne Miles will give her first opening statement.
Thank you, Matt. And I know I saw Mayor Watson around here somewhere, so thank Mayor Watson and the city for hosting us this evening, and also the Chamber of Commerce for having us. My name is Suzanne Miles. I've been serving as state representative, was elected in 2013 in a special election, and been serving since that time. Prior to that, I'm a graduate of Apollo High School, and then I graduated from Transylvania University with a business degree with emphasis in accounting. From there, I bought a small business, and I did that for almost 16 years. And then from there, I have been with Congressman Guthrie as a field representative since 2009, January 2009, after he was elected, and been serving in a federal capacity as a field representative. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for having us, and look forward to the questions.
Okay, Joy, whenever you're ready.
I'm Joy Gray. I'm a retired teacher, a mother, and a grandmother, and I'm running because I believe there's a time for a change. First thing I need to tell you is I am a Christian, contrary to what you've heard, and I believe in all life, from the womb to the grave. I believe that once you are in the womb, you need health care. The mother needs health care. After the baby's born, it needs health care. It needs a good education. It needs a good job. And after you get old, you need pensions, and you need to be taken care of. That is what I believe in. I am here tonight because I wanted you to see my face. I wanted you to know who I am and what I believe in, because there have been some things told about me that are not true. I am sorry that I have to leave. My granddaughter is playing her first 8th grade basketball game tonight. She called me last night that she'd made the team, and she's 7th grade. So she was very excited, very upset that Grandma wasn't going to be there. So I am leaving to go see my granddaughter because I believe family, God, faith rules. Thank you.
Okay, we will move to the 12th District. Representative Gooch is not here tonight, so we will move to his challenger, Bruce Coonsey.
So I get 2 minutes, is that correct?
No.
Worth a try. Good evening. It's great to see excuse me, everyone here this evening. Sometime I forget to do this. I'm not going to tonight. My wife Susie is here. She's been my #1 campaign supporter and worker, and I couldn't have done this without her. I'm Bruce Coonsey. I am running for the office of State Representative, 12th District. Born in Owensboro, grew up in Owensboro, graduated from Owensboro High School, the University of Kentucky, with a degree in education and a master's in education, and also at the rank 1 in counseling. I'm a former teacher and counselor in the Davis County Public School System, and I was a 3-term county commissioner in Davis County. I'm running for this office because I believe it's time for a change in the 12th District, and I look forward to discussing some issues with you tonight. Thank you.
Okay, 13th District, DJ Johnson will go first.
Thank you. My name is DJ Johnson, and I am honored to be the state representative for the 13th District, which includes the city of Owensboro and parts of Davis County. Most of you know my background. I'll go over it very quickly. Born and raised here in Owensboro, graduated from Western in 1979, which dates me a bit. Was commissioned into the United States Army as a second lieutenant in the field artillery, spent 11 years there. During that time, amongst other things, I commanded 2 units. Enjoyed that time very much. Since then, I've basically either been working for, managing, or owning small businesses. I've been in the small business world since I got out of the Army. Why am I here? Same reason I was here 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I saw that in this state, Every bad category that we could possibly see, we were at the top of. Every good category that we could see, we were at the bottom of. I didn't think that was right. I thought I could do something about it. 2 years later, I think I've done a great deal in that respect, but there's more to do. I'm asking for your vote on November 6th, which is coming soon. Thank the Lord.
Jim Glenn.
How you doing? My name is Jim Glenn. I'm running for the 13th District, City of Owensboro, Davies County. I think of two questions every day I get out of bed. One, how do I help the people in the state of Kentucky? How do I help make life better? How do I help the people in the city of Owensboro and make life better? Those are the questions I focus on. I'm an educator. I teach business. I teach econ, finance, marketing, management, and have done for 30 years. Thank you very much, ma'am. I have 30 seconds left. My name is Jim Glenn. I'm running for the 13th District, City of Owensboro, Davies County.
All right, and finally, the 14th District, Elizabeth Belcher.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Belcher. I'm running for state representative in the 14th District, which is East Davis County and all of Ohio County. I graduated from Mount St. Joseph Academy. I am a registered nurse, certified in occupational health specialty. I am retired from the city of Owensboro as the loss prevention manager and the medical officer. I have worked in all aspects of government. I'm running for the office because every day I see working families in my district who are feeling hopeless and helpless because they don't have anybody working for them and nobody's listening to them in Frankfort. Their wages have been lowered, and the rich have gotten tax cuts while their taxes have gone up. I'm fighting for education, and I'm fighting for public employees' pensions. Thank you.
And Scott Lewis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Scott Lewis, your Republican candidate for the 14th District State Representative seat. I have over 30 years in public education as a high school teacher, college teacher and coached in high school. I've been an elementary, middle school, and high school principal. I've been a school superintendent for 13 years now, 6 years in Hancock County, 7 years currently in Ohio County. Also have service as a Kentucky State Trooper, and I've been a small business owner. I think with my varied background, I will serve the people well of the 14th District. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we get into the questions, each race, I will ask you the same question. So, and we will alternate. So I'm just going to go, Bruce and Suzanne, you don't have to worry about it. Your opponent's not here. But for you folks down here, I'll start on the left, go to the right, and then second question, start on the right, go to the left. If anyone needs me to repeat, I will ask the question as we go into each district. If you need me to repeat the question, just ask to do so, and I certainly will. 90 seconds. 90 seconds per response. Before I jumped the gun, I said we were going to start by talking about taxes, so that's where we will go. The last legislative session saw a pretty significant change in Kentucky's tax system, including adding a 6% tax on a number of services, including things such as car repairs, dry cleaning, lawn care services, etc. We have heard from some small business owners, including members of the chamber, that are not happy about this. Some are worried about how it will be monitored. Am I paying this? Is somebody else not paying it? Some are questioning why certain services were taxed and others were not. So this is going to kind of be a multi-part question. If you are a challenger, I'd like to know how you would have voted on that legislation. And if you're an incumbent, I'd like to know the reasoning behind your vote, whether it was a yes or a no. And then to both, I'd like to know, is this something that you think will be revisited in the coming session? Is there a chance that it would be repealed? And if not, do you think you will be looking at other services, whether it be legal or accounting or whatever, that could be added to that as well? So Suzanne, I'll start with you.
I think your question was longer than 90 seconds, wasn't it?
You took
I
more
think
than
it might
90
take longer than that to respond to it. I did vote in favor of the change, and this was kind of the first step, and that's a lot of the things that we need to look at. A lot of tax reform, we've talked about it for years and years and years, and Matt, you know, the newspapers run numerous things on different blue ribbon, tax codes, all these different things. The reality is this is the first step. We really looked at it from the mindset of we need to start moving from a taxing community to a consumption-based tax. And with that being said, we also did a flat tax rate of 5%. So there were several people that got a tax cut, not only at the state level but at the federal level with the things that took place. As far as the choice of the items that were more or less picked out kind of the first step, most of those services were associated with things that already charged tax for things. For instance, car repair, you would already pay for the equipment or whatever product or whatever supply were put on that car, then you would pay the tax on that. So that kind of gives you an example of the mindset of exactly what the process was on picking a lot of the different things that were picked. It is the first step. One of the unintended items that took place, and that was an interpretation by the Revenue Cabinet, was tax on nonprofits. That was never the intention. There is nothing in the bill that says tax nonprofits. And so the bill has already been filed by the Speaker of the House. I have co-sponsored that bill already to sign on to that, and it's already been pre-filed to make sure that we clarify nonprofits will not be taxed going forward. We never have, and we don't know why the interpretation was at this point in time.
You may have to set the next question out, Suzanne, because that was it on the nonprofits. Bruce, follow up with you. The 6% services tax, if you had been in the legislature, how would you have voted on that? And is that something that, if you are elected, that you would like to see readdressed?
If I'd been in the legislature, I would have voted against it. Let me say that it put the people in education and public employees in a virtually untenable position because they knew they needed the revenue for education and for other needs, but they knew that it wasn't being raised the right way. It really did pick winners and losers, but I would have voted against that. All throughout that last legislative session, we heard find funding first. And if we had an idea of what the needs were and what the cost was for pension reform, then we could have gone ahead, the legislature could have gone ahead and figured out a way to generate the revenue that was needed, and done that in a way that was open and that was subject to discussion by both parties and by the public. And then we could have had a tax bill that hopefully could have been more comprehensive and would have been fairer. It would have been spread over a broader tax base, which would have been the fairest way to do that.
Jim Glenn, I ask you the same question. 6% services tax. How would you have voted for that, and do you think it is something that needs to be revisited?
It needs definitely to be revisited. In the last 45 days, I have paid for lawn care taxes. I've paid for dry cleaning taxes. I've paid for car maintenance taxes. I've paid for these taxes. I agree with the candidate Bruce Coons. We need to revisit this. We need to take a look at making the taxes fairer. And I don't think it was cut across the entire state so everyone participated in the taxes. It shouldn't be just on the working class. Everyone should pay this. We need to take a look at a fair tax reform where everybody takes part in this. I'm going to stop there, but I would not have voted for this tax increase. I can tell you that point blank. But we need to revisit this and take a look at making the taxes fairer for everyone. Thank you very much.
DJ Johnson.
Thank you. I'll start off with the last part first. This is step one, so absolutely we'll be continuing to work on the tax issue when we go back into the next session. And it's a multi-year process. The reason we did it incrementally was because we didn't want to have happen what has happened in other states where they tried to do everything at once, got it wrong, and crashed their economy. That's why we're incrementally doing this. I would like to see the income tax go away. I'll give you an example of why I think we need to do this, and that's Fort Campbell, Kentucky. In Fort Campbell, Kentucky, it's half Tennessee, half Kentucky. When employees and soldiers come into Fort Campbell and they decide where they're going to live, they have the choice, Tennessee or Kentucky. Tennessee has no income tax. Kentucky does. 80% of those soldiers live in Tennessee, 20% in Kentucky. Why? Because there's no income tax. Now, they have a higher sales tax. They have other things that are in place, but people just know that if they're not paying an income tax, they have the control over their money. And that's why 80% of them are in Tennessee. When we do this, I'd like you to think about what happens when we're competing with Indiana. We have that advantage, not Indiana. We have the advantage that Tennessee does now. I'll also say this, yes, I have 2 dogs. I've paid taxes on my pet bills now. I accept that because we're moving forward in the direction we need to go to be competitive with other states. I will also add, Jim, that you also got an income tax reduction that helps offset what you did with what you've had to pay for those service taxes. Everybody in this room, if you paid state taxes, you got an income tax reduction this year. Thank you.
Moving on to the 14th district, Elizabeth Belcher, the 6% services tax, would you have voted for that? And moving forward, how do you think it should be, or should it be readdressed in an upcoming session?
Number one, I would not have voted for it. I think the move to a consumption tax is a regressive tax. It impacts the poor and the working families most as a portion of their income. And I think that if given the opportunity, I absolutely would revisit it and go for a fairer tax where it addresses taxes on everyone. This consumption tax was put in place to make up for the revenue that was lost when the tax cuts were given to the top 1%, and it doesn't even begin to cover that loss of revenue. So we need to go back and do a fairer form of taxation where it addresses those that can pay due, because currently the rich pay a lower portion of their taxes. They pay 6%, where the middle class pay almost 11% in income tax. And I think it's going to really hit home whenever you file your income tax this year and you find out you've lost a lot of your deductions, like your state and local tax deductions, your health insurance deductions. So I don't want Kentucky to be like Kansas and be an economic experiment that has gone bad. And so, yes, absolutely, we will revisit it.
Scott Lewis.
Well, you know, I think both parties can agree, and I've heard this from both parties, that we do need tax modernization. It's outdated. Our tax code's outdated. I don't know how many years old it is now, but I think that last figure I heard, approximately there was $2 billion more in deductions than there is revenue. Well, I mean, we obviously need the revenue, so you know, there does need to be modernization there. And the biggest question I've had on the campaign trail is, okay, why those 17, or why, you know, how did they get picked? So I'm still not sure on that question, because the ones that have gotten hit hard, like the lawn care and all those, they're wondering why some of those other services weren't and they were picked. So that would be something that I certainly would want to have an understanding on. But, you know, as it is, in just those 17, I feel like we rushed through that, and there needed to be more time spent on the tax modernization. I could not vote for it in that form.
Okay, as a follow-up to that question, and Suzanne brought it up, and she's absolutely right. There was an unintended consequence to that, and to be fair, that was driven in part by a ruling that the legislature had nothing to do with, and that involves nonprofits and how there's a differentiation between property and fundraisers and so forth. So now, essentially, some of their fundraisers are considered taxable services. Is that something, and you've already, as I said, you've already touched on this a bit, but I'm going to give you your 90 seconds anyway. Is that something that you believe the legislature needs to address, and how do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. I think that we do. Do you not want to ask any of my other friends up here beside of me? Well, the reality is nothing is ever going to be done perfect, and we all know that, and it's not uncommon throughout the process. And anyone that's been in Frankfort or watched Frankfort knows that Very few times are things done perfect, and a lot of times you go back and revisit things in the next session to adjust or regroup. The reality is, Representative Johnson said it. This was the very first step, and it's the first step because no one's done it. Nobody's made an effort for a very, very, very long time to fix anything, quite honest. And that's where we are. We've got a lot of things that are outdated. We've got a lot of things that have been neglected. And that was why the initiative is, several of us that were newly elected were there because we're trying to make an effort to make the tough choices, to move forward, to make things better. And, it wasn't unintended for nonprofits. I've met with many nonprofits to sit down. We walked through those and had a lot of discussions of exactly what would be and what wouldn't be, because it wasn't everything. It was certain items specific and it was a very convoluted conversation, and we gave them phone numbers so they could specifically call and ask whether a ticket to an event was going to be taxable or a auction item weren't going to be taxable and things like that. We've got a lot of things that were already on the books that were not being enforced, quite honestly. And that was no reflection of the things that we did. The end result was, like I said, we have addressed it. We have filed a bill to address the nonprofits moving forward.
Bruce Coonsey, based upon your first answer to the tax increase in general, I would assume that you feel the same way about this as well. But what do you think needs to be done in order to address this issue that a lot of nonprofits are clearly upset about?
I think we just have to pass legislation that would exempt them from that particular tax. I don't see it as being particularly difficult to do that. The bigger issue really is in the next legislative session, who's going to be making the decisions? And we can say we agree with this, but if we don't have a House of Representatives that is controlled by the Democratic Party rather than the Republican Party, in effect, the Democrats have no say in the process. And for us to really be able to work together and to come up with a solution that's a compromise, we need to have that. And then I think that we can work together on some remedies for the current tax reform issues that do exist, such as the nonprofit issue. So, when you look at the general fund as a percentage of the state's economy, in 1991 after CARA was passed and a lot of the loopholes were closed, the general fund was 7.3% of the state's economy. Today, the general fund's 5.9%. So the revenue has not kept up with the economy. If it had, we would have over $2 billion right now that would be available for the legislature.
As we move to this end, just a reminder that those on my right will go first on this question. So DJ Johnson will start for the 13th district. What do you think needs to be done to address this issue for nonprofits?
Well, as Representative Miles mentioned, Speaker of the House has pre-filed a bill to deal with this. I also have co-sponsored it. I actually initiated a bill on my own, then found out the Speaker was going to be initiating his bill, so I deferred to the Speaker and just co-sponsored his. But just a little more information about this issue, just so you can, it's probably in the weeds too much, but how this happened is that virtually at the same time we were finishing up the session, the Kentucky Supreme Court came down with a ruling about this issue that basically tied the hands of the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue had not been enforcing, through their understanding of the laws, some of these different things. When the Supreme Court came down with the ruling they did, and I won't get into the details about the ruling, but the bottom line is the Department of Revenue felt that their hands were tied and that they had to come out with the decision they did as far as taxes for nonprofits. But we can fix that, and we're going to fix that. The bill's already in place. It's going to happen. It's going to happen very early in the next session. Thank you.
Jim Glenn.
Correct the taxes on the nonprofits, period.
Simple enough.
That's it.
We'll move down to the 14th district. We'll start with Scott Lewis.
Well, I do think, from talking to everyone, I do think that it will be corrected, and I do think it was unintended consequence to that bill. And I think we all live in communities that, quite frankly, depend on nonprofits for different things, whether it be schools or whatever in the fundraising. So I do believe no matter who's in office or whatever, I think all these people up here would agree that it will be fixed.
Elizabeth Belcher.
Also agree that it should be fixed. I just had a question. I was wondering, like St. Jerome's, when I first became aware of this, St. Jerome's down at Fancy Farm had to write a check the day of Fancy Farm for $13,000 to Kentucky Treasury. And so my question would be, will these nonprofits be getting that money back? Or is it just from the time that it passes until it goes forward? Another non-intended consequence of the tax bill was that for retirees, they were able, before the bill, were able to exempt $41,000, their first $41,000 of their retirement income. And with that bill, it was reduced to $31,000. So that's another tax increase on the people, especially our senior citizens. So, yes.
Okay, moving on to the next question, I want to talk a little bit about what has been commonly referred to as a bathroom bill. And I know that a bill was filed in the House last session and actually had quite a bit of a number of sponsors. I think maybe a 1/5 of the House signed on as a sponsor of that bill. And obviously that type of legislation can be divisive. I know the governor questioned why it would be necessary, and I know that a lot in the business community, particularly in states that have passed similar legislation, talk about what it does to the state's economy. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on, is from the business perspective of where do you stand on this bill, and how do you weigh the concerns of business leaders who warn that a bill that could be seen as socially divisive can hurt the state's economy?
Well, I did not co-sponsor what's called the bathroom bill. I do understand the thought process behind it. I know that there's been concerns of, of children being in bathrooms with the opposite sex and concern with parents for that matter. So I know that is where the basis of it came from. I did not co-sponsor it because, quite honestly, I feel like government has bigger problems that we need to deal with right now. I think the pension bill, the infrastructure, public education, we've got a lot of issues that we need to focus on, and I just didn't feel like that was something that needed to be a priority at this point in time. And the rest of that is, I really, quite frankly, think that people need to figure out where to go to the bathroom on their own without the government telling them where to go. So,
Bruce Coonsey.
I'm opposed to any legislation that discriminates against any individual for whatever reason. I think once we start down that path, there's no end to it. So I do think that the individuals need the right to choose where they want to go to the bathroom, and that would be my position on this. I don't know that it's as much of a problem in high schools as maybe some people think that it is. And I think if you ask the high school students here, they'll tell you that it's not really something that causes a great deal of concern among the high school students.
Okay, we'll move to the 13th district. Jim Glenn, you'll go first on this one.
Good question. I had dinner in a restaurant 2 days ago, and the bathroom was male and female. I mean, in the same bathroom. It's something we have to take a look at. I agree with the other people on the board here with me. I would like to do a research study. Take a look at across the country. What are they doing in various states at various levels? Not only in elementary schools and high schools and colleges, in restaurants and gas stations. Because I've driven across the country, and in some states the bathrooms are male and female. In some states it's separate male and female. I'd like to take a look at where the people in this district, District 13, feel it should be. And because I'm going to respond to the public in that area. And just basically take a look at it. Do a study, find out where the population is across the country, ask the people in the 13th district where they want to be, what is in the best interest at the elementary school, high school, and college level, and try to figure this out. Thank you very much.
DJ Johnson.
Well, first off, I'm not interested in curtailing anybody's rights. But I would like to actually take that a step further. We talk about the rights of the individuals to choose, but I'd also like to keep in mind the rights of the individuals who would like to be able to choose not to share a bathroom in high school with another teenager of the opposite sex. So it's a two-sided coin. Yeah, we need to look out for the individual rights of those who are wanting to do something different than what the norm has been in our history. But there are rights of other individuals as well. So it's a very, very difficult topic. I kind of like your idea, Jim. If we need to study it a little bit more than what we have so far. But the bottom line is I'm looking out for the rights of every individual, not just the ones that are mostly talked about. And I hope that kind of lays it out. Bottom line is I'm concerned about everybody that's involved with this issue, not just one group. Thank you.
Okay, in 14th District, Elizabeth, you'll go first.
Okay. I think that it's addressing a problem where there is no problem. And as far as it's just a divisive type of issue, we see a lot of that, trying to divide people. But the thing that came to me is when this all was brought up, you have male and female truck drivers, and they share bathrooms all the time. And so their biggest concern was, how's it going to affect them, because they didn't want to get arrested. But I think a study has already been done, and I think North Carolina was a great study on this issue because they tried to implement this law, and as financially it really impacted their ability to attract industry and also their tourism business, because they brought in a lot of what am I trying to say? Concerts, people that bring in, the different businesses who come into that have events there. They have lost millions of dollars because of this issue. So I think there has been an issue out there that has been proven.
Scott Lewis.
Well, I'm going to address it from the school level, and we, some of y'all may not realize this, but some of us that are still in it, we have seen this issue, and I don't know about you all that have children, but in a school setting, I don't think that our parents want our kids going to the bathroom with different sexes. So in that area, there are issues there. So we've already had to address those, and we have as an individual district. But as far as it being a law, or a bill, I'm not sure how I feel on that. And quite frankly, like I said, I think you would have to at least separate the schools out from that, and the businesses may be something else. But I can tell you this: the parents of the district that I serve would run me out of town if we allowed that to happen. So that's how I stand on that.
Okay, for the next question, I want to talk a little bit about home rule, and I know all of you all setting up here know what that means, but some may not. So for those who don't, that's just a term that basically describes abilities for local governments to kind of set their own path and not be limited by legislation at the state level. So, Suzanne, can you talk a little bit about do you support home rule? If not, why? And if you do, give a couple of examples where you think the legislature could make that easier for local communities to kind of set their own path.
I think the biggest obstacle we have right now, we have different classes of cities, and at one point in time we've kind of gradually gotten to the point where there's less in the classes that were designated to start with. We've kind of been working towards the direction of having less in different categories. The difference is we've got some class cities that are able to put a tax, whether it be a restaurant tax or whatever it may be, locally, to add on to the sales tax to bring up business. I think Madisonville has that in their area, and they use that funding to do specific projects in their area. I think that we're at a point that we need to make sure that all the cities and all the counties have a level playing field. So I think we need to re-look at the different classes of cities and what we allow all the different ones to be, to make sure that the level playing field, so that everyone is playing by the same rules and has the same opportunities, whether it be to address things at a local level and have that opportunity. Whenever we take it out of that, the reason it was done originally, I believe, and I wasn't there then, so I have no idea, but I would guess that you try to give an advantage to a smaller community. You try to give an advantage to an area that may have an opportunity that has a lot of people coming in from out of town that maybe their locals might not be paying most of that additional fee that would be money brought into their community. So I think at this point in time, we're at a level that we need to start playing everyone by the same rules and give everyone the same opportunity to make some decisions locally.
Bruce Coonsey.
So originally, the restaurant tax was approved for smaller communities because they didn't have the tourist tax. And so it was a way to balance that, because the smaller communities generally wouldn't generate tourist dollars like a larger community such as Owensboro might. So they allowed them to have restaurant tax to generate revenue. So, and there were different classes of cities now. I think now we have first class, Louisville, Lexington, and the rest of the state's the same, but I think they were grandfathered in as far as what taxes they were able to levy. So we do need to have a level playing field. So I do think local communities need additional options, but I also think that they need to be done by referendum, especially in a community like Owensboro, where we've had pretty significant tax increases over the past few years. And I think by and large, the taxes are paying for things that were good for the community. But I think it does reach a point where people have been taxed enough. So I would not be in favor of simply offering more alternatives so that people could be taxed even more without their approval. But I do think that local communities need to have those options, and they could be specified for capital projects or for different reasons. But I would support that, but with the caveat that local communities would be able to have a referendum to approve those measures.
DJ Johnson, you'll go first on this one.
Thank you. This is going to become an echo chamber, I'm afraid, but I will add to what's been said by saying this, that my individual gut instinct is always going to be for local rule, home rule. Local government is better than higher up government. But at the same time, as a representative, I've learned there are some things that from the perspective of the state, I would not see as an individual, or I would not see at the local government level. So I'm unfortunately going to sort of take a pass on this, in the fact that we haven't really discussed this in detail in the last 2 years to the level that I would like before I can make an informed decision. I can just say that my gut instinct is local government is better than state or federal government, but until I feel that I've got all the facts and can make an informed decision, really, it's just difficult for me to give you a hard and fast answer on that right now. It would be unfair down the road for me to say something now that I wouldn't feel comfortable with later. So I'm just going to say we need to do more studying, and when we get there, I'll make the decision that I feel is best. Thank you.
Jim Glenn.
I was just thinking about the question. What would be the best for the state? I understand Louisville. I understand Lexington. I understand Northern Kentucky, Covington. The populations are large enough, and their business area is large enough they can support a number of taxes in their area. The problem is some of the rural areas. Will the state be stuck with these problems later on? Be stuck with the tax bill later on? They make poor decisions, and the states and the areas are too small to support some of the taxes that they're putting in place. Then the state is going to be stuck with it. The state will have to come in and cover this stuff. We need to take a look at what areas would be, trying to think, where should the cutoff be on cities that set their own tax bases and the state won't be liable for them? It's almost like running your family with emergency funds or rainy day funds. What size should this be? We need to take a look at this basically in a little bit more detail and try to figure out where the state can allow cities and counties to have home rule and where the states won't be liable. I hope I'm making sense. And that's a concern of mine. Thank you.
Scott Lewis.
Well, I think any tax like that should be decided locally. The people locally elect those officials, and if they're not satisfied with them, they're allowed to not vote them back in. So, just like here in Owensboro, you mentioned Owensboro, we've got the riverfront now. That's an outstanding. This community should be very, very proud of the things that have been done here in Owensboro, and so if people aren't, responsive to those type of things, they can vote the elected officials out.
Elizabeth Belcher.
I have dealt with this before, having worked for the city. It has limited us in a lot of issues that we wanted to do, but because of our classification that we were prohibited from doing. I think that local rule is the way to go, but like Bruce, I believe that like a restaurant tax or what have you needs to be voted on by the taxpayers. We have been hit with a lot of taxes in this area, and if we do go with something like that, then we need to look at maybe reducing some of the taxes that we have, like on our insurance taxes and also our occupational tax. But I am in favor of local rule.
Okay, this will be the last question for the night, and then we'll do closing statements. Going to focus on education for the last question, and obviously that's an incredibly important topic to the business community. And pensions have clearly dominated that discussion, and rightfully so, but there's a ton of other stuff going on dealing with preparing the future workforce, charter school legislation, changing the graduation requirements, and so forth. So I guess I want to ask, what do you see as the role of public education in Kentucky's workforce development, and what do you see as your role as a legislator in this equation?
I think public education has the largest role in preparing our students going forward. I think that we've done a tremendous job, especially in this area, of planning ahead. We've got so much dual credit and things like that are taking place, that we have children that are graduating high school and receiving their 2-year degree at the same time, which is quite amazing amount of time that's been put towards education in this area. As far as what does it look going forward, I think that we've got a lot of different issues where people keep saying charter. The only thing that's been really discussed has been public charter, which is something that we need to understand, that every single child in this room does not learn exactly the same way. I know you're familiar with the Innovation Academy. I know you recognize, and many people in this room recognize, that is a different way of learning for students, and it is not, it's perceived that it's a cherry pick idea, and that is not an accurate assumption, because we look at a lot of different ways to train our children and to do the things like that. We also a lot of times forget our parochial schools. We've got a lot of parochial schools in the vicinity, and they've done a tremendous job of educating children and training children going forward. The most important thing we have right now is making sure our workforce going forward from high school starting to plan some of the things. I know Representative Castleton has spent a lot of time with GoFame, and a lot of the people that he has had to work for him has been through that process, and that's been an amazing opportunity that we've had in this area.
Bruce Coonsey.
Yeah, would you repeat that, Matt?
Yeah. What do you see as the role? What do you see the role of public education being in workforce development? And if you are elected as a legislator, what do you see your role being in that equation?
Okay. Well, I think that the local community colleges across Kentucky have done an outstanding job in preparing students for, especially for trades and for other types of professions that don't require a 4-year degree. I think high schools across the state are beginning to realize that their curriculums have got to be changed, that students are not learning in the same ways that they did when I was in school many years ago, and that we've got to be able to adapt to a changing society. We also have to realize that we can train people for jobs, but the jobs have got to be here, and they've got to pay decent wages. And when 30% of the people in the state work for minimum wage that puts their families at poverty level, we've got a long way to go before we get to the point where people are making a working wage for good jobs. So we need to train the people so that they have the skills, but we also need to have the jobs available that pay them a living wage. And $7.25 is not a living wage. So I hope that we can work on that as well and take a look at the minimum wage in the state of Kentucky and do it in a way that's not harmful to businesses but also benefits low-income individuals who really need a lift up right now.
Jim Glenn?
I had a conversation this afternoon with the chancellor for the community college system. We talked for probably a half an hour. We talked about dual credit. They're trying to push it down to 9th grade. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is, are the students fully equipped when they get to the college level to do the work? And what most people don't understand is the math requirements, the reading requirements, critical thinking. High schools are all rote thinking, rote memory. There's a major change when you get to college, whether it's a community college, Western, or UK. It's critical thinking, and a lot of people can't make that quantum leap. It's a whole different type of education. Are our kids going to be equipped to do that? What do we have to do to get them up to speed? And like I said, we had a conversation, and we don't have an answer for that yet. We are still discussing it because they want to push it down to the 9th grade, and the question is, are the kids fully equipped to do it? There have been a question right now. The governor has talked about testing students at the 10th, I got you, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade with tests in math, science, and reading. If they don't pass it the 10th grade, then test them again at the 11th grade. If they don't pass it then test them again at the 12th grade. My question I don't have an answer to is, what happens when they can't pass the 12th grade? The report I got was 93% of the kids in the state of Kentucky are graduate with a high school diploma, but they're getting to college not fully equipped to compete. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to stop.
DJ Johnson?
I understand how you could go on forever about education.
Yeah.
So it's probably the most important topic that we talk about, because think of it this way: if my math is right, our students spend more time with their educators, with their teachers, than they do with their parents, waking time. So but obviously, education is probably the most important thing we can talk about. And one point I want to make is that all school systems in Kentucky are not the same. Here in Davis County, in this region, we are absolutely blessed with fantastic school systems. The Owensboro Public Schools, Davis County Public School System, I think probably without question, the two best, if not the two best, two of the best in the entire state. There are places in the state that don't have those blessings the way we do. One of the best things about our school systems is that we do look creatively at things. The Owensboro Innovation Academy is just one example of that. We look for ways to educate our students so that they can be ready for the workforce that's coming up. But not everybody in the state's like that. So if sometimes we talk about issues that we don't like to hear locally, it's because we do look at the statewide level on some of these things. I will say this: we take education seriously in our caucus, and that's why we have record high amounts of SEEK funds that we passed in the budget this year. That amount has actually led to a $497,000 increase in funding for our public schools here in Davis County because of the money we passed with the SEEK funds. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth Belcher?
Thank you. Regarding the SEEK funds, since 2000, SEEK funds have been lowered by 16%. The higher education, our universities and colleges have been cut 35 times since 2008. And so, first of all, we need to fund our schools. We need to have more partnerships with companies, with our local community colleges to prepare so that they can help prepare students for the workforce. But we have to attract good jobs to the area. $11 and $12 jobs are not going to get it. People, just to rent a two-bedroom apartment, you've got to have $16.20 an hour. So we have to have higher-paying jobs, which means it's a vicious cycle. You have to have good education, good quality of living for companies to locate in your area. And so we have to come up with better ways of recruiting and working with these companies to partner with them to develop programs that we can prepare these students for the workforce whenever they come here. We are shifting funds from the state, which usually come from the state for education, to the local level. And we're seeing more and more our taxes are going up because all those funds are being shifted to the local level away from the state. We need to find funding for education through other alternatives. Thank you.
Scott Lewis.
Please repeat the question, please.
Yes. What do you see as the role of public education in Kentucky's workforce development, and what do you see your role as a legislator in the equation?
Well, obviously, I feel like as a school superintendent that education is a driving force, not only of workforce development, but the economy. And we do have great schools in this area. We have kids, Suzanne mentioned, graduating with a high school diploma and 2-year degree. We have kids that come out that are master welders. We have embraced in the school systems to try to get our students college and career ready. And I think we're doing an outstanding job of that in this area. Can we do better? We can always do better. And we always strive to do better. There's been a lot of talk about the charter school legislation. I know that the legislation was passed, but it wasn't funded. Charter schools is not the answer for the state of Kentucky. For every good charter school, I can show you 10 ones that aren't very good. We do charter school type things now in this area and in a lot of areas in the state of Kentucky. Charter schools is not going to fix Jefferson County, Lexington, Northern Kentucky, some of those areas. Communities can fix that. Why we have good schools is we have community involvement. We have teachers that will bust their rear ends to work extra hours to help these kids. That's what's going to help turn those schools around. The community and funding for qualified teachers. And, we have model schools in the state. We can model those in Jefferson and Fayette counties. But I don't think that charter schools is an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to closing statements now. Again, just a reminder, 60 seconds. We will start down here. Suzanne Miles.
Do I always get to go first?
You always get to go first.
Okay, just checking. I guess one of the things I kind of went back through the Chamber of Commerce of the priorities, and basically what I want to hope to deliver tonight is we've come up with solutions. I mean, we've had a lot of problems through the years, and as far as the priorities, 2016 family court judge, we've delivered that. We've also delivered some support from that through the Chief Justice for a second subsidiary judge, I guess you'd say, with Judge McCarty. We appreciate that. One of the main things that we keep looking at is transportation. Transportation is one of the focal points, and that's been one of my proudest moments, that we continue to work on interstate access for Davis County. And I think that we talk about bipartisanship. Whenever I passed the resolution, when I first got to Frankfort, every single legislator in the West Kentucky caucus, Democrat and Republican, signed onto that resolution to support upgrading the William Natcher interstate to interstate status. So that's happening. So we're delivering. Only thing I'll say really quick to wrap up, even though my time's up, but since I got to go first, I really do just kind of think we listen to a lot of things. The reality is, I do think it would be funny if Liar's Pants really did catch on fire.
Thank you. Bruce Coonsey.
I don't know how to respond to that.
It wasn't directed at you, Bruce.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. That's not part of my 60 seconds.
No.
Thank all of you for being here this evening. It is good to see almost a full house for people that are interested in local government and in the state government. I am anxious to be able to serve in the state legislature. I want to work with everyone there, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I respect every individual at this table, and it's okay to have differences of opinions, because very often you learn something that really works from someone you don't agree with. So, I look forward to serving the legislature and working together with everyone. We definitely have got to take a look at tax reform, pension reform, education funding, and infrastructure. Infrastructure and education are the two main drivers for economic development in Kentucky, and we've got to have those. Also want to mention, I'm not taking any PAC dollars from any special interests. We're funding our campaign through citizen contributions. And I think that's important because no special interests are causing me to be obligated to them. So my obligation is to the people that I serve if I'm elected. And I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Jim Glenn.
Yes, sir. For those who are not familiar with me, I've worked in 3 sectors of the economy. I've worked in education, business, and government. In education, I went to UK, picked up a doctorate there. My doctoral dissertation is in finance, so it's all about managing money. I've been a college dean, managed $8 million as a college dean in business. I've been an academic dean. In business, I managed $45 million in industrial sales. My background is printing. I sold printing from Erie, Pennsylvania to Omaha, Nebraska, and did it for a number of years. In government, I worked for the city. The budget was $65.9 million. We left the city with a $1.2 million surplus. And then in state government, I met every president of a public school along with their financial officer in issuing money in this state. I am a business person and I'm an educator. Have been for years, and I mean a ton of years. This is what I focus on. Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate the vote for Jim Glenn, running for 13th District, City of Owensboro, Daviess County.
DJ Johnson.
Thank you, sir. As I started with when we opened tonight, the reason I ran 2 years ago was because I was sick and tired of Kentucky being at the top of every bad category and the bottom of every good category. And thanks to you, I was elected to take on those issues, take on the hard decisions that needed to be made. And as a result of that, in the last 2 years, partly because of the decisions we made in Frankfort, we now have across the state $12 billion plus in new business investment. Here in the district area, it's hundreds of millions of dollars of new investment, 17,000 new jobs across the state, over 1,000 new jobs here, good jobs. And when I say good jobs, it's because not only is there business development, but manufacturing is back. Manufacturing is back in Daviess County. And because of that, when we bring those manufacturing jobs in and those businesses grow, jobs become available, good jobs. And that's what I was working on for 2 years. We're there. Unemployment, 3.7%, lowest in history. Job growth, the highest it's been in history. I said we were going to work on those issues. I did that. I'm asking for your vote to continue to do what I started doing 2 years ago. Thank you.
Elizabeth Belcher.
Thank you. I want to thank Greater Owensboro Chamber of Commerce for hosting this and giving me an opportunity to speak to you. I'm fighting for working people, especially our firefighters, police officers, our teachers, and our public employees. Businesses in Daviess County need to realize there are about 2,400 of us in this community, that we bring in $41 million into our community, and that's turned over 1.43 times. And so I think that you need to keep that in mind whenever you're voting on pensions and education for our community. We are in the fight of our lives, and I ask that you vote for me on November the 6th so that I can continue to fight for our working families. Thank you.
And Scott Lewis.
Well, you've heard a lot of the people up here tonight say that education probably is one of the most important things that they deal with in each session, and it will be back on the table, I'm sure, in January. And that, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I'm running. I have over 30 years experience. I've handled or managed 13 years worth of budgets from the state, the good, the bad, the ugly. I would be able to take to Frankfort with me, what happens when you cut family resource centers, or what happens when you don't have textbook money, and so forth, down through that line item budget. I know those things. I'm also a small business owner. I know the red tape that we need to cut out there. I know about our law enforcement. I know that when in 2013, when we reduced benefits for state troopers and hazardous duties employees, we got less employees and less people applying for those jobs. So I hope with my varied experience that I would serve the people well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, not just here tonight, but I know you've done many of these throughout this process, and it's almost over. So we do appreciate you being here. I appreciate the audience, too, very respectful audience. And just a reminder, we are bringing the Senate candidates in next. It'll just take a couple of minutes to get that set up, and then we'll jump right into that. Thank
Can
you.
we thank the timekeeper?
Absolutely.
You did a good job.